Hello, 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 and a very warm summery welcome back to a blistering new episode of the Music Talks podcast. I'm Leon Hill, and we continue unflinching on our journey to be the world's #1 alternative music podcast. And our episode this week really hammers home that intention. Every week we speak to the good, the bad and the aesthetically challenged, grinding through the gears of the music industry and getting down and dirty with some of the most interesting people in one of the most creative industries. Disruptors, innovators, anyone and everyone we think you should hear from. Get to our website, www.musictalks, all one word, .fm, www.musictalks.fm, where you can subscribe direct to your podcast dealer of choice. We are live pretty much everywhere. iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, You Heart Radio, We All Heart Radio, Spotify, Podbean, Pocket Cast, the list goes on. And don't forget the reviews. They mean a huge amount, as do a full 5 stars. I know you're probably fed up with hearing this, but it does mean a massive amount. It also means that we get a bigger reach. And the more people we can communicate to, the more fun we're all going to have. We're all social animals. Get to our Insta, @HelloMusicTalks, same handle on Twitter, @HelloMusicTalks, and we also have a weekly Spotify playlist that is curated by our guests and features any tracks we might have name-checked on the show. You can search on Spotify for Music Talks Podcast. That will get you to the playlist, not to the podcast. Confused? We all are. We are super happy to see the podcast is getting picked up all over the world, giving us a truly global footprint. As well as here in the UK, we have listeners in the US of A and Iran. Come on, guys. Can't we all just be friends? In Denmark, Sweden, France, Germany, Holland, and super sunny Australia. So a huge hello and thank you. Remember, it's not where you're from, where you're at. And where we're at right now is about to sit down with a very interesting guest and play you some very good music. Today we're talking to Judah Armani, a social designer, we'll find out, a social designer that is addressing a growing issue in today's prison system. And it's not an easy win that he's gunning for. The rate at which offenders in the UK re-offend is at 60%, okay? Let's think about this for a minute. So more than half of the current serving inmate population will be back behind bars, that's guaranteed. But in these times of growing wealth division and the fetishization of conspicuous riches and privilege, how do you compete with a life of crime when a life of crime can offer you all of those things and more? What does this have to do with music though? Good question. Judah is the dangerously positive powerhouse behind InHouse Records, a record label operated from within the confines of prison walls. InHouse strives to be a creative incentive that can offer a springboard to a career in an industry that can compete with the easy riches of only the luckiest of drug dealers. By devising a set of 5 guiding principles, Judah set about constructing a system that is ultimately an archetype for producing an environment of enablement for whatever skill you are trying to enable. And there are some real learnings to be had in this episode, so keep your notebook handy. InHouse deliver incentive, creativity, belief and respect in equal measure. The product is not only richly rewarding, but sounds great too. But let's hear from someone way better positioned than me to tell you that.
Well, first of all, when I've heard about InHouse, I just thought, nah, forget that. That's just some guys to just be involved in something, just tick some boxes, I suppose. So at first I wasn't really into it, but then the more I heard people talking about it, I thought, let me go and see. And as soon as I went down and see, I've not turned back since. InHouse gave me a sense of value, sense of inclusion, gave me more discipline. I knew I had to behave, otherwise I wouldn't be able to continue being on a privileged course as such. Now InHouse is my life. It's every day, it's 24/7. Yeah, man. I'm meeting new people, meeting people that I would never get to meet on the other side of the life that I was on before. So InHouse is giving me loads of opportunities. It's giving me a new lease of life.
Music Talks.
Judah Armani, welcome to Music Talks. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I founded a social design practice called Public about 12, 13 years ago, and that's using design thinking and design strategy to look at solving social issues and creating initiatives of change. And I've been working in a decade in homelessness and started a decade in criminal justice system. And we create initiatives. We work for clients as well who might want to develop some of their kind of own social engagement, but we also develop our own initiatives. And our own initiatives, one of the latest ones is called InHouse Records, which is an initiative that's been set up to reduce reoffending. So my background was in design, product design, and then more recently in service design. And yeah, I want to contribute to making change.
How do you move from a design background, albeit with an emphasis on social change, working with homeless people, for example, how do you then make the jump into the music industry, something typically one associates with glamour and hopefully sort of success to an extent?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So as is normal, I've probably got like 3 slightly different answers. So the first one is around how we perceive people in challenging circumstances. So I think society default looks at people in challenging circumstances through one lens. We even call them the poor. There's an understanding of actually we'll define people by their bank balance, which kind of tends to take away the value of a human being. So even yesterday, I was coming home from town in Brighton, just walking back, and a guy stops me. It's like, "Excuse me, have you got any change? My mum's really ill, and I need to catch a train, and da-da-da, and da-da-da." I was like, "Cool, let me go and buy you a train ticket." "Well, actually, I don't need the train ticket. If you've got the money, that would be great." "Why do you need that?" "Oh, because I need to do it." Anyway, regardless of the outcome, look, you are very confident. You speaking to people who you've never met before. You're a very young man, and you're telling stories. Now, we both know that they're lies, but you're a confident storyteller. In another scenario, you would be paid very well for that.
Yes.
In this scenario, you're ignored most of the time. There's a value and a skill set that is just not being repurposed. I mean, that's a bit of a trite example. But the point is that when we talk about homelessness, we're actually talking about people. And then we're talking about humans. And then we're talking about their experiences and values. And I think there's definitely a societal understanding that if you're coming from challenging circumstances, you've definitely not got anything to offer until you get yourself sorted, and then you can. That's kind of one reason why something that looks totally juxtaposition like music. The second reason was because I didn't actually decide what it was. So part of design thinking and a design process isn't focused on some kind of Don Draper moment where you like suddenly are like, "Oh, I've got the idea, it's cigarettes." It's years of research, understanding the ecosystem as much as possible, understanding the complex layers that prevent people from social mobility. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the obvious stakeholders? Who are the hidden stakeholders? How does this actually all operate? And you take all of that research and you refine it into some core insights. And then these core insights basically give you the parameters of whatever the initiative's going to be. The ground rules, the Newtonian rules for it to exist. Whatever it actually is, kind of doesn't matter. So the initiative, InHouse Records, was actually created by 15 guys who were in a prison in Kent. Elmley. So it's on the Isle of Sheppey.
I know him. In my previous life, I've been in most prisons in this country and some outside this country. I know HMP Elmley quite well. It's not the only prison in that part of the world.
Yeah, it's on the same footprint as because prisons are on Crown land, and so when the government wants to build another prison, it's cheaper to build it on the same footprint. Mm-hmm. So Elmley is on the footprint of Stamford Hill and Swellside.
And it's a pretty grim place to go and visit, especially if you get in the train there. It's sort of like, abandon hope as you're going down that rickety old train line. And, it's a fairly industrially depressed part of the country. I mean, probably sort of better than it was. I think the only way you could make it more depressing was if you were going there to serve a prison sentence. So it's not a particularly enriched area. That's not to say any prison is going to be. You're starting from a hard place, I guess is what I'm saying. Mm. These were inmates at the time serving prisoners.
Yeah.
So what connected you, or how did you connect with them?
So again, it's part of the research. 2 years of, I guess, jumping back for a second, The approach to design, and a lot of people, I mean, it's a bit of a weird word. It's a noun, it's an adjective, it's a verb. Designer, designing, good design. The part of the design process that I think is fundamentally lacking in our society is design thinking. If we want to see a change in how things operate politically, economically, socially, we can't continue to have reflex decisions. We can't continue to operate on what we think is the right thing. It needs a long form approach, and it needs to have both reason and creativity and innovation. Design thinking is that. That's not to say that all design disciplines operate like that. Some design discipline or some creative disciplines operate purely on the dark arts of inspiration. You know, it's like you bring me something and I'm just going to come up with something on the spot, which is great. But social design, designing initiatives of change, can't be like that, because we're talking about real people. And just purely my view as a designer is even those kind of roles would not be harmed if they did more research. So, to answer your question, 2 years of research meant I spent time going to prisons, spending time with prisoners.
So you were a researcher, you had the concept in mind at this stage, or you were just trying to find out what holes there were and how to plug them? Or
The concept was, can I contribute to reduce reoffending? In order to take that forward, I need to know what the ecosystem is. So I'm going to spend however long it takes to get some kind of semblance of principles. So when I had those, and I can share, they're 5 principles. When I had them, I felt like, right, now I can go in and let's start building around this framework. And that's I was going back to a jail that I'd already spoken to previously.
in terms of where it is now, you have an established record label, you've got more prisons coming online, or is this something that's spreading within the service? Are you getting much support from the prison service? How's that all looking? How is it now?
So now it's amazing. We're in multiple UK prisons in the southeast, so Kent, Sussex and London. We're working with many graduates, those who leave prison having done in-house in prison.
What does in-house in prison involve?
So it was formed after speaking to the guys, after going through understanding of the principles. They wanted to do something around music. So the most obvious thing after looking at everything and understanding it all was to set up a label, because we wanted the engagement to create value. So what does in-house involve? Imagine you take the tasks, the key tasks associated with a functioning record label, and turn that into a soft curriculum.
How did you know what those tasks would be, given your background wasn't from a label?
So the short answer is it doesn't matter, because, and we had a conversation earlier, you and I, about homeschooling.
Yeah.
And about how if you ask a child what they want to learn that day, they might say, I want to learn about dinosaurs, I want to learn about Paris. And you know that actually by really deep diving into that topic, you will also learn about maths and English and geography and history and natural history. Fundamentally, the task didn't really matter, because what the ultimate goal was to facilitate the opportunities for the guys to develop personally and professionally. Ultimately, the minimal viable product for a label is to produce music. So at the very least, I knew that the tasks were like, let's just create music. And then somehow we needed to promote that, and those tasks needed managing. Quite quickly, it became apparent that there were guys that were either artists, songwriters, musicians, or managers.
You can't make music without resources. You're doing it within a prison, the very sort of definition of which is to deprive people of certain freedoms. Where do you get the instruments from? How do you get access to a recording studio? These sort of practical side of things, I can understand how you get the theory, you get the people together, the sort of intention, the engagement. How do you make the music? How do you record it?
Again, it's going to sound like a boring sort of go-to answer. The years of research means that you're not just looking for a solution. In fact, you're not looking for a solution. You're looking for principles and frameworks. The solution is what happens in a co-creative process, and that's fundamental. It has to be co-creative. Everybody has to have a stake in it. If the guys didn't create it, then it would be another service that is done to them or created for them. In-house is a record label that is reducing reoffending and reducing negative behaviour in prison, created by the guys, with the guys. That's a fundamental difference. During that process of research, part of the frameworks was identifying, look, who are the stakeholders? Who are the people that are going to be part of this? Who are the people that I want to be part of this? And if it's music, which it became, then we need to have some really important stakeholders like Fender Guitars, like Roland. Therefore, they cannot be spoken to as just a provider of instruments. We need to have a conversation about the bigger picture. And we're very fortunate that both Fender and Roland are super passionate about using music as a force for good. They see what we're doing in multiple prisons, and they've been amazing in their support to us. So that's sort of like about the instruments. About the studio, well, look, if we were trying to do this 20 years ago, it would be impossible, I think. But now, you can have a studio on your phone.
Yes.
Not that you're allowed phones in prisons, but you can have a studio on a laptop. So as long as we adhere to security protocol, and each prison wants to absolutely be sure that what we're bringing in we're being used for music, which we're 100% happy to comply with all the requests, and also really keen to demonstrate the value and the worth of what we're doing. There are parameters we work through. They're understandable parameters that we have to work through because we're operating in a prison, but we're able to create the environment where we can record music and we can play real instruments. And that really, maybe that's a really good time to just sort of like pause and reflect on those principles, because the principles were 2 years of research refined into 5 principles prior to us even knowing it was going to be in-house. The first principle was focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. My time with the guys in jail led me to an understanding that the people that I was spending time with, involved in organised crime, dealing drugs, were entrepreneurs. They understood product, stock, flow, supply, demand, portion pricing for all the wrong reasons, but they understood it. So there was clearly something that wasn't quite right here, because these were sharp, entrepreneurial, motivated people that were demotivated in jail. And this isn't a criticism, it's just an observation. A lot of the work on offer is mundane, repetitive, and rarely leads to resettlement objectives. Part of knowing someone, part of focusing on what's strong, I was able to see actually they've got some really strong skills and competencies, in the same way that I was able to feed back to Charlie, the homeless gentleman that I met yesterday, in terms of, I can see you've got really strong skills here. So how do we identify those skills? So focus on what's strong, not what's wrong, is actually about saying, can we create a space, an environment where observing you doing something that you're really passionate about, for us to be able to see what your skill sets are, what your core competencies are. The other 2 years of research, other things in 2 years of research is going to lots of different businesses and saying, what is it that's important to you to as an employer to look for when you want to employ someone? Is it qualifications? Is it technical skills? And actually, by far top of the list was an adherence to certain core competencies. Are they going to turn up on time? Are they going to be trustworthy? Do they communicate well? Focus on what's strong, not what's wrong, is about understanding that there is inherent skill, and we call these skills competencies. And how do we create a way of being able to evaluate the core competencies of someone? And in-house, we're able to tell you the strengths of someone after 2 weeks of working with them, whereas some prisons would struggle to do that after 2 years.
When you say strengths, do you mean sort of transferable skills? Things that...
I mean their core competencies. So their accountability. Are they able to do what they say they're going to do? Are they able to be in that place when they say they're going to be there? Do they take responsibility for that? Adaptability. How do they deal with change? If the normal routine gets messed up, are they still able to meet the tasks, the deadlines? How do they deal with constructive criticism? How adaptable are they to be able to move forward? What's communication like? Are they good at listening and understanding and then responding? Are they good at communicating the same message but to different audiences? What about problem solving, leadership, teamwork?
These are all social skills.
Yeah, there are 7 core competencies, and there are lots of different ways to measure them, but we found that the best ways of measuring them are in an environment where you're able to see people thrive. That's the first principle. The second principle is about creating safe and enabling environments. 51% of the 86,000 people in prison never finished mainstream education. Then anything that feels academic or looks academic or feels like a classroom scenario is ripe for self-sabotaging. So create safe and enabling environments is about providing the opportunity for discovery, for unstructured learning, for play. In fact, Einstein said that play was the best form of research. So we found that if you create that space that doesn't look like a classroom environment, because that creates a lot of apprehension and a lot of anxiety, but is a safe space. And so safe and enabling environments is not just social constructs, but they're physical spaces as well. What do we do in those spaces? Well, together, co-creatively, we make them feel different, make them feel more like a music environment. The third core principle is around sustainability. That is split into two, if you like. The first is that whatever the initiative was, I knew that it couldn't just be dependent on charitable donations, because we would not be able to consistently deliver something. And if I was going to shake people's hands and look them in the eye and make promises, then I needed to know that we were there all the time. We've got to be able to deliver. And the only way we could do that is if I knew that we could provide something that was consistent. And actually realizing that, if we could provide a service that could support a prison, the things that they find difficult, actually we were able to support, then we were able to present something of real value. So those difficulties could be around motivating the guys to work, for example, could be around reducing negative behavior, could be around increasing positive behavior, which will have a knock-on effect on violence. So if we could create a service then that was valuable and that could meet some of those obvious needs, then actually that would be something that prison service would be happy to pay for.
And are you getting funding from the prison service or the Home Office?
Yeah.
That's great.
We are providing a value service
Right.
that meets both the needs of the prisons, but also our objectives.
Yeah, I'm a UK trained lawyer. I wasn't always in the music industry, so way back when I was doing this kind of work, I'm not so sure that you would have had that degree of far-sightedness working alongside them, identifying their objectives are actually your objectives, and that there is value in them supporting you in what you're doing, not just in giving you the freedom and the space to access prisoners, but in giving you real support in terms of the economics and the finances of making something like this work.
I 100% agree. The people that are the human beings that are involved in those systems, they're not there because that's a career ladder for them. They're there because they're golden-hearted people that want to be involved in change in the most difficult circumstances. So the desire and the heart and the intention to be involved in change is absolutely there. The fact that sometimes the system, because it has to be spread thin over the nation, because it doesn't allow for the flexibility of other services, more dynamic services. You look at the stages and processes of booking a holiday. It's very simple, and it's made very simple, and it's very easy. And if you go and do something on Airbnb, each major milestone that you go through actually feels lovely and safe and wonderful and exciting. We don't have the time and space to make each milestone that you go through, from presenting yourself as statutory homeless to getting housed, equally as nice and wonderful. It's difficult, and they're not joined up so neatly. And actually you have to physically go from one place to another, and there is no digital platform that wraps it all up.
And it can be very dehumanising having to repeat the same story of how you run out of luck, you've had hard times, you don't have a support network, you don't have people that care about you, you don't have a home. The more you tell that story, it chips away at your self-respect and confidence and your ability to go out and change these things, or it makes it harder.
Well, especially if the default position is those milestones exist, couched in a way where it's like, I want to make sure that you are in need of being the recipient of these funds.
Yeah.
As opposed to...
Is your bad luck bad enough to qualify you for this help, for this assistance?
So when you're coming from challenging circumstances and you are being questioned about that already means that you're not only on the back foot, because you have to justify how bad your situation is. The worse your situation, the better the justification you have, and it just creates a really unhealthy environment. For the second part of sustainability is I want to create sustainable relationships. The majority of the guys I met do not have a good experience of relationships. That's why mentoring is an important blend of what goes on during the week. So there's a blend of unstructured learning, there's a blend of mentoring. The byproduct of unstructured learning is curiosity. And so curiosity naturally leads to a more structured kind of learning, as people ask about, how can we actually make money from music? How does that, well, actually, let's do a 6-week little mini course on copyright. Let's do a 6-week course on this. So that's focus on what's strong, not what's wrong, create safe and enabling environments, sustainability, language, dialogue is the fourth principle. So that's based on roughly, after being in prison, somewhere between 12 to 14 months, the average man will see his vocabulary reduced to about 2,000 to 1,500 words. So when we talk about our violence in prison being high, and it has been high, 88% more violent than it has been in the last 2 years.
Almost twice as violent.
Yeah.
In terms of like reported violent crimes within prisons, right?
So when we're talking about violence, it's important to know that we're talking about a language of violence. If you do not have the words to be able to communicate or express what you're saying, then you're going to go from 0 to 60 very quickly, and there's not going to be enough breaks to be able to stop you going to that point. Dialogue is super important, and whatever the initiative is, I knew as a core principle we needed to hard bake the opportunity for dialogue groups. That's why, and that's important connection between unstructured learning and curiosity, is that it creates dialogue. The more you play with something, the more questions that creates. I want to, how can we, what does this, all of these questions come from playing around, having that opportunity to do that. And the fifth principle is around the architecture of choice. When you're coming from a challenging background, you do not get to choose what trainers you're going to wear, or where you're going to live, or the food you eat, or the friends that you have. So choice is important to build into the initiative, because fundamentally choice reminds us that we're humans.
Well, it gives you that autonomy. You know, it allows you to make decisions over your own life, whether they're important, less important, or completely irrelevant or mundane. Stripping that away or restricting that. In fact, we all know how that feels when you're told you can't do something. In some cases, it'll make you want to do it more.
100%.
You know,
when we were running the drop-in, the homeless drop-in, all the mistakes in that first decade are so naive. But we had a meat option and vegetarian option. And they were like, actually, I think you should put like a halal option. And we were like, oh, okay, right, fine. So we did that. And then somebody else was like, I think you maybe need to put a kosher option in there. And actually, you should be putting in a vegan option. I remember one week seeing one of the guys and he had vegetarian. And the next week he had the meat. And the next week he went for the... I remember saying to him, do you like subscribe to any kind of like dietary thing? And he was like, oh, no. But when I see choice, it reminds me that I'm a human. When I can choose not to have that, and I can choose to have this. Fundamentally, even by providing, something as simple as a choice of different foods to eat in a homeless drop-in, you can go some way to re-emphasizing our humanity. So those 5 principles was the refinement of 2 years of research that was able to build the boundaries, if you like, for what in-house should be. And then apply to in-house, what does safe and enabling environments look like? It means that our sessions are a blend between unstructured learning, some structured learning, and some mentoring. We run on a 12-week cycle. The task is, with a new cohort, and the cohorts are between 15 and 20, the task is, right, guys, we've got 3 months to create a showcase that is going to be attended by the music industry, friends and family, and people from the Ministry of Justice. And you're going to produce it, you're going to write it, and you're going to perform it. Away you go. And staff are going to support you in that journey.
you're not in there every day of the week, are you? Or are you? You are. Well, 5 days a week?
4.
So 4 days a week for 12 weeks. I'm no mathematical genius. You're in several prisons at once.
2 members of staff per each prison.
And what is their background? Do they have a teaching background?
As it became more obvious that we're creating a label, the question is, well, who has time on their hands? And what are the key elements that they have to have? And what are the areas that they can learn? So flexible hours, it was looking more like session musicians. So therefore, can I, as I'm designing this, look to design an onboarding process that can create and equip a session musician who has creativity, has the ability to play, has the ability to teach, and jam, which is unstructured learning. Can we create an onboarding process where they're able to look for the competencies and encourage and develop those competencies in an individual? So the pool came from, right, I'm going to look in the music industry.
How's that worked?
Amazing. just have incredible, amazing staff, all of whom are really passionate, all of whom are like brilliant musicians in their own right. Another layer on top of that is that they also want to do something of value.
Excellent, excellent. From the start at HMP Elmley, how long ago was that? How much time?
October 2017.
Not even 2 years.
Not even 2 years.
Wow, you've achieved a lot. Is there a roadmap? Do you see it growing?
The first hand I shook was someone in Elmley prison. I made promises as to what we're going to be able to achieve. So I need to deliver on that. It's about delivering on those individual relationships. That's most important at the moment. Before we grow in lots of other prisons, we need to ensure that what we're doing on the outside continues to support the guys. So we have just come to an end with a brilliant initiative with the Royal College of Art. First year's service design master students, graduates from in-house and in-house staff, all worked on a 5-6 week project to create a platform that can support the graduates upon release. And then we've got something that is a proper wraparound that starts in prison and goes all the way through.
You know, sometimes there are people that really don't benefit from being interrupted, that are clear enough in what they are saying, considered in their answers, and in being so are incredibly inclusive. Judah has that skill. So you aren't going to hear too much from me in this show. Interruptions will be at a minimum. So how about from here on, we only interrupt to play you a track from the in-house crew? Yeah? Sound good? Okay, well, let's get the ball rolling. We have a big tune for you, simply entitled Game Plan. Bring it.
Now let me take you way back. 012 hit me hard, now I'm a changed man. I was only 18, now it's 018. I ain't the same me, I ain't the same man. I took some L's I couldn't make back, but at least my siblings are in safe hands. I got my hands dirty trying to make bands, but don't blame man for my game plan. Don't blame man for my game plan. I ain't the same man, I'm a changed man. Had to switch it up like ASAP. Feeling like the world's trying to play man. All this weight on my shoulders trying to break man. I had to draw for the scales every 28 grams. I look at the world through a tinted glaze. You look at the world through Ray-Bans. Got me doing time, I can't waste that. After all this time, won't get these days back. I just wanna be home to hear my daughter say dad. And for that you can't blame man. I wear my heart on my sleeve like it's name brand. I'm a made man. These dons see me eat, I wanna starve man. See my plate on the table and take that. Yo. Now let me take you way back. 012 hit me hard, now I'm a changed man. I was only 18, now it's 018. I ain't the same me, I ain't the same man. I took some L's I couldn't make back, but at least my siblings are in safe hands. I got my hands dirty trying to make bands, but don't blame man for my game plan. Ain't it mad how tables turn? Ain't it mad how bridges burn? Ain't it mad how red eye could turn your best guy to a snake? But I guess that you live and learn. Things have changed, I live for her. The money made, I give to her. If you thought I took risks before, I take 10 times more now she is born. It's all mad out here, but we parents now, you know what we live for. There come a time when we was living poor. I ain't trying to let her see what we all saw. I'm trying to give her everything and give her more. And that's my word, love. Hand on heart and on my burner. On my life, let the case be murder. And before I go any further, now let me take you way back. 012 hit me hard, now I'm a changed man. I was only 18, now it's 018. I ain't the same me, I ain't the same man. I took some L's I couldn't make back, but at least my siblings are in safe hands. I got my hands dirty trying to make bands, but don't blame man for my game plan. Now let me take you way back. 012 hit me hard, now I'm a changed man. I was only 18, now it's 018. I ain't the same me, I ain't the same man. I took some L's I couldn't make back, but at least my siblings are in safe hands. I got my hands dirty trying to make bands, but don't blame man for my game plan.
There's a roadmap in that sense of like we need to get the structure right. There's a roadmap in the sense of, I say validation, I don't mean it because we didn't start this in order to win awards. That's not the point. However, in-house has been built on design with business and the music industry. And part of that roadmap initiative is being recognised within those three sectors. So we've won multiple design awards, which is amazing.
Well done.
We were really excited to win our first award in the business world, which was the NatWest Social Enterprise of the Year award.
Congrats.
Which is brilliant. The last one is music and recognition in music.
This is what I was sort of heading towards, was who are you engaging? Have you engaged anyone from that side of the coin, that world?
Yeah, we, just like we've been really fortunate to work with a man who oversees a couple of labels within Universal, Jim Chancellor. So Fiction and Caroline. Super grateful to Jim. And I think we can tick the music industry thing when we get a BRIT or a MOBO. In addition, what else do we look like? Well, after validating the 3 sectors that we're in, then we want to look at expanding what we do from outside of the Southeast to look at other areas around the country.
For those people that don't know, the prison system and prisons in the UK are categorised, right, from category A through D. Violent offenders, typically, violent sex offenders, your sort of category A, and those prisons are very high security, very intimidating, lots of barbed wire, lots of guards, lots of gates. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got your category D, typically sort of open prisons. You might be working or allowed out to work during the week, coming back at night. You may have home visits, these kind of things. With regards to the kind of prisoners you're working with and the kind of establishments you're in, and I know some of them, but I'll ask you anyway, are you restricted in the category of prisoners that you work with and the category of prisons that you can get into?
We are BCD, and sometimes we get to go on that journey with some of the guys. So not necessarily for every prisoner, but for some prisoners, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes we're able to be in those prisons and journey with that person. So they might be in-house in one jail, then they get moved to a lower risk jail, and they pick up with in-house again and continue
Do you lose many graduates as a result of them moving through the system like that?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. It's difficult, and I understand that those moves, those changes need to happen for various reasons. Our engagement rate, we have a reoffending rate of 0.
Well, I was going to ask about sort of how you quantify sort of success. How do you know you're doing the job well? How do you know that it's succeeding?
So reoffending helps us understand what we're doing on the outside. 15 months of working with the guys on the outside. I remember the very first guy that was released last March 2018. And so now, 15 months later, we still have 0, which is compared to the national.
0 reoffending from all graduates?
Yeah.
Wow.
Compared to 60% is what the reoffending rate is nationally.
Right.
It's a small pool of people, so we're talking about just under 40 guys, graduates.
Not to be sniffed at. That's 40 more people that aren't going back into jail, that aren't being paid for by the taxpayer, etc., that actually have a more positive springboard to move on from.
That's a really interesting point. The cost is, to the UK government, is 15 billion a year for that 64%. We have an engagement rate of just over 80%. So pretty much most of the people that are released continue to work with in-house on the outside.
When you were saying that you brought in session musicians, I thought you were going to bring some of those graduates back in. Are you using them? I suppose it's going to be difficult for them, isn't it? Because they'll be on probation and they won't be allowed to associate with offenders.
Sometimes it's possible, but for lots of really good security reasons, it's not possible. It's a blend, and it has to be looked on an individual basis. We can then also continue to say, well, what does employment and what do these things look like? And they're important to have those kind of metrics, but what's a far more important metric is, are we facilitating and supporting the guys to do relationships better? Because if you are able to do relationships better, which is why the competencies are important, then you'll be a better employee and you'll stay in that job longer. But more than that, if you have the craft of relationship and if you are able to do that better, then you're going to be a better father and a better husband and a better member of the community. And we're talking about guys that would never ever really modelled how to do relationships well. And so they've had to work it out for themselves. And a lot of the things that they're employing now just aren't fit for purpose today. So on the outside, there's some very easy ways of measuring. On the inside, we create reporting on a monthly basis.
Okay, and that's to the prison service?
Yes, but also for ourselves and for the individual to say, actually, your communication was really good this month. Let's look at those areas. Adaptability was not so strong. Let's look at why that's the case. And how do we create these metrics and data? We observe the individual tasks that the guys do. What are the tasks? Well, our objective is to do a showcase. We need songs. We need it managed. We need it stage managed. That takes lots of different tasks to do. So each week there are tasks that need to be measured. Did you do the song? Did you write the lyrics? I did, or I didn't. I either did it really well or I didn't do it at all. Okay, so let's understand a little bit more about that. And so observing and understanding and measuring and developing all around a task-based initiative that's wrapped up in something that's aspirational as the music industry allows us to create the space for a social transformation.
Got you. Over the course of the time you've been running this project, have there been any standout students, graduates that you're working with who you think this could be a day job? Are there any that are making it, or are they trying to make it a day job?
Bearing in mind, and I know this wasn't your question, if we had created InHouse with the primary objective of seeking out and profiling talent, then we would go about it a different way. We would have a stronger selection process on who comes onto the program.
It's an open door, right?
It is an open door, but it's an open door, but it's understood that it's an open door for guys that really aren't engaging with anything else. There is a perception that people in jail get things a bit too soft and they don't have to make sacrifices.
Holiday camp.
Right.
Yeah.
If you've ever set up your own business, you know that's difficult. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of difficulties. If you've ever tried to set up a business within the competitive arena of the music industry, you know that's even harder. And if you try and do both of those things from within a prison, you know it's triply hard. So the first thing is that, make no mistake, this isn't an easy ride. They work hard. The second thing is they're giving up something. Their engagement with something and how they're perceived in the prison, because if within a certain group of people the culture is to not work at all, and suddenly you see guys that are going to class, that sends out a message, and they might not necessarily be well received within their community, even in prison. It's just worth saying that they're giving up stuff, and it's hard work. Mm-hmm. It's not easy, because they have to perform and they have to be vulnerable and they have to do all those things. And that's an important facet of InHouse's engagement and how it rolls out. We've seen pretty much in every jail we've been at, there's been someone that is an outstanding artist. So much so that another major label that has heard the music and they've said, I would sign this person in a heartbeat.
Interesting. Now, one of the topics that we sort of find ourselves talking about a lot on these shows is the changing nature of the business of a record label. And so to speak to somebody that's setting one up, not only in a prison, is quite interesting, because at the moment it's very easy to read about how easy it is to do a lot of this yourself, do away with the sort of traditional role of the record label. Do you teach any of those sort of ancillary skills? You mentioned copyright earlier. Fundamental, if you're writing music or writing songs, you need to know how to protect it and exploit it, how to value it. But now the skill set of a DIY artist has to embrace so many touch points, whether that's managing social media, whether it's understanding how and where you can distribute your music yourself. How much of these skills are folded into what you're doing?
Yeah, loads. If we go back to how we create the space to teach or to inform, because it comes from a space of unstructured learning and discovery, the curiosity is already there, the guys. So they're asking these questions. How does the industry actually work? What is it built on? So we've created 12 or 13 different sequence topics that run for about a month. Management, the industry, copyright, production, beat making. How music really was the first industry to be the casualty of digital in ways that banking and taxis and hotels are experiencing now. Music was the first one.
Music was the first, and I think music suffered. Not only did it respond too late, it responded incorrectly, and the losses were huge and dramatic. And it's become a sort of a shipwreck that everyone else can sort of look at, and by doing so, avoid the rocks. I think what we're now seeing is not only is more money coming back into the industry, but we're also seeing it embrace some of the ideas and concepts that had it embraced earlier, farther back down the line, the damage wrought upon it probably wouldn't have been so great. Whether that's looking at the types of services that are in the market now, whether it's looking, you mentioned Jim Chancellor at Caroline, it's essentially a label services company, which 5 years ago, not even, we wouldn't have known what a label services company was. It's a really good time for, aside from the social impact of the work, but it's a good time to be existing within the framework of the music industry.
Spot on. Unintentionally, unconsciously, we've created a label. The label aspect was the least important thing. The most important aspect was the support, the additional ancillary bits that we add on to that, which are around personal change, transformation, care, the well-being of the human. Interestingly enough, as digital decimated an industry and basically unbundled all the different services that were once housed in one place, and then said, actually, you can be the master of your own thing, we see that successful initiatives around the music industry are the ones that have managed to pick off those individual services and rebundle them again to say, look, Actually, it's great that you can have lots and lots of plays on Spotify, but if you try and play a gig at your local pub and 2 people and a packet of crisps turn up, that's because the other services that you would have had initially
Promotion,
aren't
marketing.
there.
Yep.
And so whilst people might hit your music, they have no idea who you are. And what a services, which would have been, a traditional label would have done, was all the ancillary bits that are going to provide a wraparound for the artist. We've focused on the person anyway. The fact that we've got that with music means that there is a crossover in what we're trying to create that is applicable to the industry, although our end goal, it's reducing reoffending, safer communities, less victims of crime. However, some of those elements can be packaged up in terms of like, we want the best for each individual. If they actually have music that they want to release, then it means that we're a different kind of label where we really want to see the success of each individual and their well-being, which means that we operate with a value system that's actually quite important to us and not just sort of words. And then, by default, it means that if we have music and content that's popular, we actually have a really strong, human-centered, stable platform that we can operate from.
We talked about how the metrics that you guys use to value the work that you're doing and the way that you can gauge whether it's being successful. How do your graduates gauge their success on it? Are they completely aligned with sort of what you're doing and they see those sort of interpersonal or personal changes it's affecting on them? And do they see the value in that? Do they see the value in coming out and having skills they can transfer from a 12-week course and take it outside and use it to produce, to create, to write? Where are they seeing the value?
It's a spectrum. Therefore, it's like standing in the beach, and there's going to be some that will go up to the ankles, and there are some that are going to dive in, and everything in between. The value for some of the graduates is literally a safe and enabling environment to make music, and that's their engagement with InHouse. That's absolutely fine. If it means that they're not going back to prison, and they're seeing InHouse as a place where they can make their music and share and express something, that's great. There are others that see InHouse as a place where not only can they make music, but they can also develop and build other areas of their life. That's brilliant. If they want a deep dive with InHouse, we've got that support and infrastructure to do that. And the more someone leans into InHouse, the more we're able to take that weight and move forward. So it's a range.
I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of potential in what you can do. How big do you see it growing, and do you see a switch in focus perhaps to that outside of the prison service, outside platform? The more successful it is, the more graduates you're going to have, right?
That's a really good question, because we've already experienced, not huge amounts, but I've already experienced 3-4 guys who have come home, who've never done InHouse, but they've heard about it while they were in jail and have contacted me via the Insta to say, can I get in touch with you guys? Can I join what you're doing on the outside? So already we're seeing our graduate platform becoming populated not just by InHouse graduates, but by people who are aware of InHouse whilst they're in prison, never had the opportunity to join it, and are saying, can we get involved? So I think it's a really astute question, because I feel that InHouse might grow in ways where we are reaching people who have left prison that we never actually got to work with in prison.
Or before they get to prison.
Well, now that's the next interesting element, is that a couple of our graduates are going to start another initiative, which will be imminent, where we're working with a brilliant charity called Catch 22. And they're going to be working with young people who are at risk of offending, not repeat offending, it's for the first time. So now we're touching on areas of gangs and knife crime and things like that. And they're able to operate as our staff would in prison. Pretty much the same thing. Come and join this record label. Come and work with us. Instead of meeting in a prison, we get to meet at Psalm in Ladbroke Grove. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's where our safe enabling environment's going to be.
Psalm Studios, Ladbroke Grove. Shout out to those guys.
Absolutely amazing people who have been supportive, along with Jim right from the beginning. So that's going to be our safe and enabling environment. That's where we're going to focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. That's where we're going to develop sustainable relationships. That's where we're going to promote dialogue, conversations, and the architecture of choice. Not only are we looking at potentially guys who have never done InHouse before engaging with us, or not potentially, that's already happening. that probably happen more. That platform needs to be robust enough to work with people who haven't had that grounding but are inspired by what we're doing. How do we onboard them in a way that means that they're almost fast-tracked development and nurturing of their competencies that they wouldn't have had in jail? And then also we've got this other element, which is the complete opposite of the spectrum. So we're working in an intervention way in jails, and now our graduates are going to be operating in a preventative way on the outside, and that's happening imminently, that initiative. So to answer your question fully, it will split. We will focus more on the work on the outside, simply because right at the very beginning of this process, the question I asked was, can I, as a social designer, contribute to reducing reoffending? And reoffending happens out of prison, not in prison. So our initiative needs to be solid and strong on the outside in order to be able to do that.
Okay, let's take a step back. Deep breath. Feel like something a little bit breezy and melodious, but still fairly meaningful. Okay, it's the second track from the guys at InHouse. Stand By Me.
Baby, please don't go, 'cause I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. Baby, please don't go, 'cause I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you.
Yo, you gotta stand by me, 'cause I'll show you how loyal a man might be. Don't think I'm trying to make you my wifey, but I'll hold your hand when I walk up the high street. I wanna show you off and maybe hold you tight when it's late at night and we're dozing off. I've been through the battles and I've soldiered on. Stand by me and we'll keep rolling on. I know that you're strong, so we can stand tall, baby. Stand by me and I'll stand by you. There's a lot of people hating and they wanna see me fall, but with you by my side, that I just can't do. I need you by my side, through thick and thin. He can stand by her, she can stand by him. I'll be in your corner if you step into the ring. Just know I got your back right till the end.
Baby, please don't go, 'cause I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. Baby, please don't go, 'cause I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. A place to spend my quiet nights. So much on my mind, I need a ray of sunshine. I feel no light. Every day is night. I need help on standby. Stand by me. A wing and a prayer, a shoulder for the soldier, a pillow for my tears, an ear for my fears, a pen for my thoughts, a channel straight to God. I need to get on top. Stand by me. I need a helping hand. Stand by me. Sinking in the sand. Stand by me. Need you to understand. Stand by me. I need you hand in hand. I need a helping hand. I'm sinking in the sand. Need you to understand. I need you hand in hand. Baby, please don't go. I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. Baby, please don't go. I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. I spent years in the darkness. Now you show me the light. You gave me peace and forgiveness. Baby, don't leave my side. Baby, please don't go, 'cause I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. Baby, please don't go. I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. Baby, please don't go. I don't know what to do. I can't be myself if I can't be with you. 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 If I can't be with you.
First of all, that wasn't what I was expecting. I probably had my own preconceptions about what I was going to hear. I think that's what I call music the hard way. There's an easy way to make music and there's a hard way to make music. It's very easy to sit down, string a few samples together and not actually be involved in the instrumentation to any real degree. What it sounded like I was hearing there was real instruments.
Yeah.
Being played by real people.
Some by the guys, some by my staff.
Okay. I think I was expecting to sort of hear something not as musical. If you told me that was made by prisoners, recorded in a prison, guys whose background was criminality, deprivation, or lack of opportunity, as opposed to musicians going out doing their job. Great, fantastic, all sounding really good, really good. Credit to you. You know, it's very easy to sort of think, just how many units is it going to sell? How much money is it going to make? You know, is there a formula that will work here, as opposed to sitting down, writing something from your soul, something that conveys a message or speaks to other people, you know, in a real sort of way.
You're spot on. Some of the guys will have, when we start on the 12 weeks, will have an idea of what they might want to do. Very clear that the music that we have to put out, that we must put out, aligns with who we are.
I imagine there are people that, again, guys you're working with that have a clear idea about what they want to do. And there's a lot of guys that are in prison in their situations because they come from a community or an environment, whether that's gang related or on the peripheries of gang lifestyle, where drug dealing and violence is a part of everyday life. And listen, some people are making great music singing about that. And I was kind of expecting to hear some of that, but I didn't hear any of it.
No, and so there's two things. One is that it's important that the guys know that I'm not saying that's wrong. If you stick a poet in a war zone, what's he going to write about?
Bullets and blood.
Right. I'm not saying it's wrong, and there's that narrative that was there from an early age. But we make it really clear to everyone but InHouse isn't about staying in that place. InHouse is saying, actually, there is this stuff that's going on around me, but I want to move to somewhere else. What I'm going to sing about and the message I'm going to give is either this is my journey to leave this place and I'm going somewhere else, or that's where I want to be, or this is what I want to leave. It's not about making this the destination, because all the guys realise that the aspiration of that destination has led them into jail. That's not what they want to put their trust in anymore. Will there be other people that will say, look, I'm much more comfortable singing about that kind of environment? And to them will say, that's totally cool, but it just won't be an in-house track, because that's not aligned with the direction that we want to move in, which is leaving this place behind. Yep. That place needs to be in your rearview mirror, and you need to move somewhere safer for you.
How easy do you find that conversation with guys like that want to create and want to do that? Are they happy to sort of make a change and sort of take a step to the side, or?
We always have that conversation right at the beginning.
Right.
So it's really clear, and it's a really easy conversation to have. So guys know where they are up front. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't say that within the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, they still might be writing music glorifying this place. That's fine, because you can't expect someone to change immediately and suddenly start writing positive lyrics, because that wouldn't be true. But if there is personal development, if there is some kind of transformation after a couple of months, then that's reflected in the music, and that's the good stuff. If there isn't, then it's really, just honest, frank conversation saying, look, is InHouse right for you? Is this the right place that you want to be in right now? Because it sounds like this area here is where you probably want to be involved with and remain involved with, and you don't actually want to move out for this. You're spot on. There's many people that are making money selling that music. Now, whether they've experienced that or not doesn't matter to me. For my guys, it's really important that they understand the stakes. If they are released and they carry on making music about that, it's the 21st century. People will test them. They will test them to see if that music is real. They will rock up to a gig or rock up to where they are with a phone and see if you're actually, the difference between what you're singing about is true to your life. And if it isn't, that's you documented and gone and spreading viral. And if it is, then you're just perpetuating this vicious circle. Anybody else that's out there that does it, whether they live that life or not, I'm not really bothered. But for my guys, if they make that conscious choice to say, this is the music I'm making, and I'm going to make this music, but I'm going to try and keep it separate to the rest of my life, it's like, well, look, you're already opening a door if you're going to do that.
And this seems like the perfect point to hear our third and final selection from the InHouse Records roster, and some sunny summer vibrations for you. This is Concrete Jungle Rough 2.
Yeah, I ran into the wall. Now I'm on the wrong road, riding till the wheels fall off. Minimum wage ain't nothing to a real boss. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way.
Home sweet home, that's the place where brothers don't play fair. No 9 to 5s get paid off them flake squares. Mummy tried to get away, but I was raised here. Told this young and move this pack, but please my brother take care. That's another life lost, I know it ain't fair. Trapped up in the system, a far cry from daycare. Concrete jungle, gorilla snakes and them apes here. Wins and them losses in my life, I've had a fair share. Man, I've had my fair share. Red bottoms on my feet, I feel like the Fresh Prince. But I ain't Will Smith, and this ain't Bel Air. Politicians get richer, the poorer get poorer. I ask myself this question, would they care? If the shoes on the other foot, would they share? This is the concrete jungle, no rules to the game. No wonder why nobody don't play fair.
I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. When the pins are in position, I throw a strike. Stars out of space, I'm a satellite, means I got a purpose. You know what my work is. Get rid of this dirt, detergent. Money, power, respect is there to be earned. I'm in an igloo with Pengu, you don't know that's Peng food. Soldiers by the sea like the Navy, I sent 2. Got them doing shifts that pay for essential. Cabin fever, all that itching is mental. Cool, we got the medicine that will mend you. Tax free, gingerbread man, come and catch me. I don't touch a bar like Cadbury's. Pull it on any strip like MacD's. Some man chat grease, nothing but actresses. Tell them pull your skirts down, something smells fishy. Done serving, now I just do dishes. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. Show me a way, show me a way. Show me a way. Show me a way. Rewind. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. I'm in a concrete jungle. Take me away, take me away. Life is an uphill struggle. Show me a way, show me a way. Show me a way, show me a way. Show me a way. Show me a way.
Are there any sort of real no-nos that will get you thrown off the programme?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots, behaviour needs to improve, not just in the sessions. But again, it's a journey. And so the more engaged in this safe and enabling environment where we focus on what's strong, know what's wrong, and we have sustained relationships and dialogue groups, the more that happens by default. If there's no desire to change, if behaviour isn't changing, it probably means that the principals aren't being engaged with, which probably means that they're quite happy to stay in that same place, which probably means in-house isn't right for them and they're not right for in-house at that moment in time. Then there's a host of things that would prevent someone from continuing. And that's right and that's good, because actually that's life. That's part of engagement in life. But if people make mistakes, that's different, because failure shouldn't be something that prevents us from continuing. If there are isolated mistakes that we make, actually we create initiatives that are anti-fragile, that get stronger with failure, because it's better to fail in an environment where it's safe and enabling and you can be picked up and we can carry on, than it is to have a perfect environment and then when you've come home, you know, the first bit of failure, getting a red letter from the council, can spiral you into some unhealthy coping mechanisms. But if you've experienced that failure before within InHouse, for example, and it hasn't defaulted in a spiraling unhealthy coping mechanisms because we've been supportive of like a journey back, then it's least likely to have a domino effect.
Interesting. Is InHouse for you personally a finite journey? Is there going to be another project afterwards? Or do you think that this is something that you still haven't got your teeth into yet?
I mean, it's both. I haven't still got my teeth into it yet, but I'm committed to making change. It's what I am passionate about. It's a vocation. And I'm passionate about it not because I want to create lots of change for other people because I feel good about that. I'm passionate about it because actually, for me, change is essential. Forget my design practice. I crave it. I crave personal development. I want to be better as a father. I want to be better as a human being. I want to be better as a friend. I want that. That's important to me. And so that's the driver for me. The fact that I get the privilege of doing that with people who want change and are hungry and as thirsty as change as I am means that actually you get to find your tribe. The people that I tend to work with all want change, and that way we're all aligned. We all want a similar thing. We're in different circumstances, but we all want to change.
And that sort of concept of change seems to be something that people are becoming very aware of and very receptive to at the moment. It's easier to communicate nowadays. It's easier to trade ideas. It's easier to educate in some respects. Talking earlier about how it's a very fertile time in the industry for those objectives, or your objectives within that sort of framework to be met, but also talking about change, talking about evolution and talking about development. Again, it seems that it's a very ripe time, a good ecosystem to sort of get there in. So when do you think this baby is going to be sort of big enough to go off on its own? Do you think you've got another couple of years left? Is the idea to sort of get it up so it is self sort of subsisting and let it go off into the wilderness?
That 100% that'd be the idea, and actually for it to be steered through a combination of the existing staff members and graduates, which would be the most natural conclusion to it. When? Maybe the platform might be ready by summer 2020, and then the next sort of milestone would be, can we do this in a location, in a geography where it isn't easy for me to get to, you know, in a few hours, and test how that operates. And then if that starts working well, then already, you know, my remit and role begins to decrease. At the moment, I hardly get involved. I don't deliver any of the sessions in prison. Staff do. So you know, my involvement is already hugely lessened in that respect. And with the development of the graduate platform and the pathways, it'll probably be diminished even more so.
A nice sort of natural, organic, if you like, way of separating off, and at the same time you're keeping close enough to make sure that all those critical points aren't going to fail or get close to failure, or if they are, you're around to manage them until you get to a point where, you know, butterfly comes out of the cocoon and off it goes.
And off it goes. And then by then, the only sort of like consistent role that has remained has been being a spokesperson for InHouse. But frankly, people are much more interested in hearing the graduates be a spokesperson than me.
Proof of the pudding.
Exactly. And so that creates the opportunity where, as a good designer, you design yourself out of the initiative.
I think it's been a really interesting conversation. It's been fascinating finding out more about InHouse, you personally, and the journey that you guys are all going on.
So we have an Insta, which is InHouse Rec. That ends up being the main portal for a lot of the conversations between our guys and direct messages, which is great. We have a website where it houses some videos and some music, so it brings it all together, and it adds in some like more longer form news stories, and that's inhouserecords.org. And then the ancillary sort of digital services that are only really repeating what happens on the Insta and the website, the Facebook and maybe a Twitter feed, but they're all on the website as well.
Good stuff. Been great talking to you. Until we meet again, thank you.
Pleasure, thank you.
Music Talks.
Food for thought. A large portion served up right there. What a guy. And what a huge amount to have achieved. Within this context, a zero reoffend rate has to be the holy grail of rehabilitation. And what a lesson in rehabilitation. Maybe we're realising that if you don't make someone feel valued and feel like they are contributing in a meaningful way, by making them sew mailbags, do they still do that? Or whatever other menial task purports to train and prepare offenders for life on the outside and on the right side of the law. Music once again shows us that it can be a mighty force with a far-reaching and deep-rooted ability to transform lives. And how about those tracks? Not bad, eh? Very quickly, you heard Game Plan, Concrete Jungle, and Stand By Me. And as Judah said, you can hear these over on the InHouse website, www.inhouserecords.org, or on their SoundCloud page. And you really should get on their Insta, at InHouse Rec, to stay up to date on what is going down in-house, or to get in touch if you feel they're talking your language, or if you have something to offer them. Don't sleep. Get on it. While we digest this week's show, let's not forget that you can catch all the previous episodes of the Music Talks podcast, and you can subscribe over on our website, www.musictalks.fm. Catch our tweets at Hello Music Talks, and the same handle on Insta, at Hello Music Talks. Okay, let's put this baby to bed. Big shout to Brutal Deluxe for the themes and the audio on this and every show. And if you want to hear the music that was the genesis of the audio on the podcast, then get over to iTunes and be searching for the Brutal Deluxe's Back EP. Thanks as always to the Backroom production team. This has been a Music Talks production. We'll see you again next week for more of the same. And remember, keep playing, player.